5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here come the Astros, burning with desire. Here come the Astros, breathing orange fire. Here come the Astros, with winning on their mind. Here come the Astros, number one every time. Go, go, Astros. We want Houston! We want Houston! Alvarez hits a high drive, center field. Veerling's back! This game is turned upside down!
And the pitch is lifted to right by Castellanos. Long run for Tucker, over toward the line, and foul territory. Makes the catch, and the Houston Astros do it again! 2022 World Series champions!
And now, Go Astros. Astros baseball from three guys who've been there since Art Howe had hair.
It is Monday, October 16th, Astros fans, and the good news is our team's in the American League Championship Series, and we felt really good until about 7:15 last night. And the bad news is, well, we watched last night's game, which, Justin Verlander pitched well. My third time through the order concerns were not brought to fruition. And, Minute Maid Park looked Minute Maid Park looked good, and the Texans won yesterday, so that's got to be a good thing. And the Cowboys didn't lose, James, so that's good for you. And
this will be the first and last time we ever mention the Houston Texans on this show.
Fair enough. So on the other hand,
LSU won.
Yes, they did, and their defense actually stopped some guys, and A&M's going to get a new coach next year, so that's good news for Andy. And
we're not.
He doesn't have to pay the $77 million, and
$77 million. He's not going anywhere
in the Northeast. So there's lots of good things going on in the world. Had a lovely weekend with my family. The Astros offense was not one of them. They scored 0 runs yesterday, and it is really hard to win a baseball game when you score 0 runs. They did try that in the 18-inning game last year at Seattle, but eventually scored a run. Don't know if they'd have scored they had 18, 27. Well, James, thoughts on the offense?
Well, so there's a couple of obviously things on the offense. Baseball is hard. Jordan Montgomery is the ace of the Rangers staff, and until Scherzer shows he can still pitch, he's the ace of that staff. He's not really giving up a lot of runs to anybody. That said, there were obviously still opportunities. Bases, you actually had several innings with runners on that he did a pretty good job of pitching out of traffic. Of course, a lot of times those runners didn't get on until there were already 2 outs in the inning. Top of the lineup did almost nothing. And, it was funny because Andy and I had been speaking, I guess, maybe it was the day before yesterday, about, I wonder if Kyle Tucker will do anything. And then I got to looking at his numbers, and I think he has the OPS of about 411. Which,
it's like 2 for 19.
Yeah, which is actually a lower OPS than Martin Maldonado. And now I'm not suggesting, obviously, that we bench Kyle Tucker, but I think that's just, it actually means the problems are worse than just one pitcher kind of took over, because there also been players who haven't done anything since the playoffs started.
Andy.
I don't want to appear to be argumentative, but I know you released a really nice article this weekend, Brian, about the 2 large offenses that we're about to see. And both of those offenses proceeded to do very little yesterday. Part of that is that you're in the playoffs and everything's magnified, and the pitchers both perform the way you would expect them to. The difference to me in the game was Evan Carter. And not because he necessarily did a whole heck of a lot, but the energy, he made 2 incredible defensive plays, one which kind of just killed any momentum that Bregman seemed to have coming out of the gate.
Yeah.
And then again at the fence when Altuve forgot one of the most basic rules of base running, but that's not surprising for Jose Altuve. But the big deal for me was Carter taking the double when he probably shouldn't have, because he caught the Astros completely with their pants down. Kyle Tucker, as he has done several times this year, and this should not be a bash on Kyle Tucker's show, kind of lackadaisically got to the ball, and Carter turned it into a double and turned it into the only run the Rangers needed, with a hit from Jonah Heim right afterwards. So, the Rangers came to play. The good news, it's a 7-game series, and being down 1-0 while not ideal doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day, because the Astros have certainly trailed in 7-game series before during this playoff run, and it's worked out.
They trailed in the most recent 7-game series they've had, and that was a much bigger gut punch of a loss.
They were down 1-0 and 2-1.
That's right. Yeah, and first of all, Evan Carter is an exciting player. I actually just watched his interview with Ken Rosenthal afterwards, and it was kind of like if Opie had been able to get to play baseball. It was a lot of how cool is this, all shucks and whatnot.
He's very different from Opie. He's from small town Tennessee, not small town North Carolina. Very different.
So is it very different though?
About 300 miles,
give or take. Yeah, the ground ball. There's been a couple of times this year where we've seen Tucker kind of be a little too routine on balls that maybe a little bit more hustle. He holds Evan to a single. It is only 1-0, and the game does feel different. I do have to think that every single Rangers fan held their breath in the 8th inning when what looked like it could have been a home run off the bat led to, of course, a little Toot Blonde double play, but again, like Andy said, down only 1-0, and I expected a split out of these first two, so the Astros win today, and then it really looks no different for how I thought the series might play out.
This is the right place to say this. The joke at the beginning of Annie Hall is about how there are two women in a restaurant, and one says, "Boy, the food here is really terrible," and the other one says, "Yeah, and such small portions." And that's kind of how I feel about the Astros offense yesterday, which is they didn't have a lot of scoring opportunities, and when they had them, they didn't do very well with them. So they had the one bases loaded situation where they somehow managed to hit 3 singles and could only advance a runner 1 base each time, so they didn't score there. It's the kind of the way just things happen. And hey, we got bases loaded, and it's Martin Maldonado up, and well, Martin Maldonado's in there for his defense. The Bregman ball, if it's just pulled a little bit more, and Bregman's usually really good at pulling balls into the Crawford boxes, that's where he hits most of his home runs. And I actually didn't think it was all that great a play by Carter on that one. He made 2 other nicer plays on defense than that. And they went 0 for 7 against Montgomery 3rd time through the order. When he's supposed to be vulnerable, it's a chance to get to the underbelly of the Rangers, which is their weak middle relief, and they couldn't do that. So those were
not only did they go 0 for 7, but they also went 0 for 7, and it was 7 of the least competitive at bats they'd had the entire game, because at least his pitch count was up coming out of the 4th. I mean, I think he was at 50 or 60 at that point. And to your point, hold it there and get him out of there to start the 7th or into the 6th, then you have a real shot at the Rangers bullpen that I think most of us agree will not hold up if this game goes 6 or 7, if the series goes 6 or 7.
It's their vulnerability. They didn't need to expose it in this game. They were able to, again, get away with a bad pitch to Bregman because he didn't pull it enough. Again, weren't a lot of opportunities. They didn't do well with those opportunities. It's, as Andy said, it's one game, so it's a playoff game. It gets magnified. If we were talking about this after having him watch 2-0 on a Sunday in July, we'd go, well, I'll go get them tomorrow. And that still needs to be the attitude at some point. They got to go get them tomorrow. Today is tomorrow in that case. But, the meaning of this is obviously magnified, and you need, hey, Yordan Alvarez was hot as anything in the ALDS, and he struck out 3 times yesterday. So hopefully the reverse thing happens to Kyle Tucker, where he's, he does a salute to George Springer in the 2017 World Series, has a bad game 1, is slumping, and then all of a sudden hits 6 home runs. So here's to that.
It's not just Kyle Tucker. It's not just Kyle Tucker for me, though. Altuve hasn't done anything since game 2 of the DS. There's other holes in the lineup that aren't called Yordan Alvarez because realistically, and again, it's small sample sizes and you're facing better pitching and more situational awareness by opposing teams, but we just haven't had a lot of offense since, and I know we scored 9 runs a couple games ago, but I don't know that you can count on Jose Abreu hitting two run home runs every game.
But that's part of what happened in the division series, right? Is Abreu made up for Tucker's poor series. You get someone to pick someone else, which is what happens with good offenses.
Yeah,
and
Tucker and McCormick and Altuve after game 2 and Bregman. Nobody hit in that series outside of Alvarez and Abreu. This series so far, nobody's hit. Period. And this was my concern going into this series is the Rangers have vulnerabilities, but we have an offense that feels like once a week just decides it doesn't show up.
And that's what you definitely, for those people who don't know, you called that yesterday afternoon before the series started that the Astros offense might go MIA.
And I do know it's completely anecdotal and it's just my gut, and the numbers don't support it because the numbers say we have a very good offense, but it hasn't played out that way so far in the playoffs. Even though we're, won a series and we're only 1 game into this next one. That's my big concern for these next, whatever the rest of the season looks like, is that as good as we can look one day, we look really, really bad the next day or the day before.
Well, in general, the pitching staff particularly the starting pitching staff has regressed. At the same time, the offense picked up over the summer. And so in order for the Astros to win this series, they need to score at least 1 run. And 2 is they need to score some runs. You're going to have to, and again, you think you have a particular advantage late in the game or particularly in the middle of the game if you can get out of the Rangers starters and into their bullpen. They weren't able to do that yesterday. So, Andy, you're absolutely right. They gotta score some runs, not just because, you can't win if you score 0, but also because there's no particular reason to think, you think you're going to have to outscore the Rangers. Basically, it's less likely you're going to be able to outpitch them.
Well, and I might push back just a little bit on that. To me, it feels like the Astros are more than capable and have handled everybody else on this staff, except for Jordan Montgomery, who they just frankly haven't seen a whole lot. I do believe that they can go out and pound Eovaldi. We've seen it happen multiple times. I think there was his first year with the Red Sox in the playoffs in 2018. That was the only year that it felt like the Astros couldn't handle him. Other than that, they've handled him in just about, every other year that they've seen him, they've knocked him around a little bit. So I think the Astros have the advantage at pitching at all levels, and I'm sure the numbers don't necessarily bear on that, but the eye test they do, particularly if Fromber, Urquidy, and Javier pitch to the level to we know that they can pitch. They're bringing back Scherzer, who's only going to be able to give them 60 innings because that's how much faith they have in their number 3 or number 4 starter.
Yeah, that to me, and I'm sure they have their reasons. He provides them another option, but for me, Scherzer starting in a game 3 is a waste of a roster space. And I know saying this out loud is going to come back and bite me. I'm very aware of how karma works, but you've taken a roster space in a series that you need pitching for a guy who's going to be able to throw 60 pitches. Maybe he goes crazy. Adrenaline takes him to 70, and then he's done. He's not coming back 3 days later to pitch in game 7. He's not. He hasn't pitched in a month, and he really didn't even start rehabbing until about a week and a half ago. Not the heavy throwing you would expect to try to get him up to speed. His simulated game last Wednesday was 260 pitches, and he did it hungover. So good for him.
Well, and again, even to your point, Andy, he even said in an interview that if that series had ended any later than it did, he wouldn't have been able to come back because of availability to throw the sim games he needed to throw. So I just to add on to what Andy said, I don't know that, again, anything can happen. It's baseball, but I don't know that it's the smartest roster spot choice to bring a guy back who can, again, only give you 60 pitches, and that's going to be it.
Let me argue against you a little bit here, which is the Rangers are particularly capable of piggybacking because they have 3 starters. Andrew Heaney, Martin Perez, and Dane Dunning. Dan Dunning was up in the bullpen yesterday. Who, they're better equipped to handle a 60 pitch start. It's also the playoffs. You shouldn't expect 100 pitches from your starters, because again, starters are vulnerable the third time through the order, and managers.
No, I understand that, Brian, but
be aggressive. So again,
but even if you
give them 3 effective innings, 3 effective innings is really valuable in a playoff series.
Sure, but I think that when
those innings ineffective, they need to hit them.
I understand, but I think when you're talking about Scherzer, you're talking about somebody that they see differently. Usually, if you're talking about a guy that you think is only going to give you 3 innings, you expect him to be able to give you those 3 innings multiple times in a playoff series. I don't think you're going to get that out of Scherzer. Verlander went 99 pitches last night. I think that what you expect out of someone like of Scherzer's caliber, you expect someone who's going to be able to throw the team on your back for 90 to 100 pitches and get you and basically miss middle of the road guys. I also think that the reason why, if the guys you mentioned that are good, that are available for piggybacking were very effective starters, you don't see the trade for Scherzer in the first place. I think the Rangers clearly don't have the same trust of those guys. The Astros pounded those guys. So I still don't see it as I do not see when pitching to their potential, the pitching staffs to be a wash at all. I think the Astros have a slight advantage in starters and a very big advantage in bullpen. Do I sound drunk? I feel like I sound drunk right now. Do I?
No,
you've not had enough coffee. Is that your problem?
No, I wasn't feeling good. I took Tylenol PM and it didn't hit until like 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock last night. So it's like,
it's the medicine head. I mean, I think the other thing with Scherzer is I hope that we see a lot of Andrew Heaney and Martin Perez and Dale Dunning. That's the dream for Astros fans. Scherzer, outside of a couple of playoff appearances against the Astros in 2019, is where he got his reputation with Astros fans. The Astros roster, as it's currently constructed, has an 830 OPS against him. That's pretty good for Max Scherzer against, good for the Astros against a starting pitcher that's supposed to be locked down. I don't know that 60 pitches necessarily gets him 3 innings. It could. He could go out and shut us down. We saw it last night. Our offense could choose not to show up. Having said that, you've got a lot of guys up and down this order outside of Jose Altuve who hit him pretty well. Altuve's 308 OPS guy against Scherzer, which is not surprising. He's going to swing at everything. Scherzer's not going to throw him a strike. That's what Altuve does. But it just, and we're focused a lot on it, which is, absolutely what Bruce Bochy wanted us to be doing right now as fans, because he cares what we think. But it's to me, it's a distraction in the middle of the order. The Rangers, if they're going to win this series, are going to need to hit better than they did last night. They're going to need to score more runs than they did last night. We're not going to be shut out for 3 more wins for them. I no matter how disillusioned I am with our offense, I can't imagine that happening. So they're going to have to get back to the baseball they play, and that plays into our hands because I think our pitching staff is better, especially in these situations. Now, having said that, we have to perform and execute.
Which leads to conversations about game 2. And our starter in game 2 is Framber Valdez, which is, we could get good Framber, we could get bad Framber. Second half Framber has been a decidedly mixed bag. And we got not so good Framber in his previous start in the playoffs. We got better Framber in some earlier starts, and lots of inconsistent Framber. So, James, your thoughts on Framber today?
Well, so remember when I said I expected it to be a 1-to-1 split? I didn't expect. I'm worried about Framber because we have not seen great Framber, and I was at the Framber got blown up game against the Rangers. Was that in July? I guess. Look, Framber. I'm gonna go with his. I think Framber. I'm gonna go with the hope and the gut feeling that Framber matches what JV did yesterday, and we finally hit the baseball. But yeah, I mean, that's I think to your point, Brian, earlier, I can sit here and go, well, if everybody pitches to their potential, all I want. The fact is they haven't very consistently pitched to their potential. But I feel good about Fromber tonight or today. And again, I think the Astros have hit Eovaldi. And I somehow feel like a 3 p.m. game is going to actually benefit the Astros. And I don't have any real logic to that other than, I don't know. I feel better about it today.
They're reverse vampires.
Maybe.
That'll work. That's one theory. Andy.
It comes down to Fromber. I looked at this game honestly, and just on paper, you'd expect the Rangers to have an advantage with Eovaldi pitching. I kind of expect Fromber to show up. Having said that, I kind of think this ends up being like an 8-7 type game. Fromber's probably going to give up 3 or 4. Eovaldi, again, outside of 2018, we have had success against him in the playoffs. He is certainly capable of throwing the way he did against Tampa Bay, and again against Baltimore, against us. I don't know that he has that kind of skill level 3 starts in a row at this point in his career. Maybe he does, but I expect our offense to show up, bear down a little bit more, and I don't know, score a run. That'd be crazy. That'd be an improvement over what we did last night. Having said that, I think there'd be a lot more offense today. I kind of think the roof's going to be open and the wind's going to be blowing a little bit, so that helps the offense on both sides.
Don't tell Aaron Boone that.
I'm sorry?
Don't tell Aaron Boone that.
I mean, realistically, if there's 10-mile-an-hour winds with 20-mile-an-hour gusts, that is going to do something to the ball field.
I wonder if we can get a hold of Aaron Boone on whatever island in Mexico he's sitting in. You know,
not far away from a phone that the Steinbrenners can't call him on.
Probably.
He's not even playing in the Cancun series that they're promoting on Twitter, where both the Dodgers and Braves are evidently continuing their own season for top-ranked teams. It's really entertaining.
Although the mock-up of the stadium they did looks pretty nice, so I'd go.
No, I mean Cancun. You know, Ronald Acuna, Mookie Betts. One more thing to determine who's the MVP, the real prize that no one's after. You know,
right?
You wouldn't want to see that.
Brian, I wanted your take on something real quick that just broke about 25 minutes ago. The Marlins and Kim Ng have parted ways. Kim, of course, the GM of the Marlins. This to me seems like the shock of all shocks. She's considered to be one of the brightest baseball minds out there. And all the Marlins did was get real scrappy and make the playoffs. Brian, I don't know if you've seen the news, had any chance to digest it. Any thoughts?
I have not seen it before you're breaking the news to me. Kim Ng had a very effective thing, but it really sort of fits with Marlins ownership over multiple ownership groups, which is we are disorganized. We can't recognize good talent, and we're not going to put together a front office that people want to be part of. So I don't know if this is Kim Ng leaving because, you know, Derek Jeter left because they weren't going to provide him the resources he thought he needed.
Yeah, they did say part ways. They didn't say fired, so we don't know whose decision it was.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll get more sort of reporting on that. Obviously, there's always a broader context, which is in the history of humanity, it's unlikely that all the knowledge about how to produce baseball or football or basketball or, you know, how to be a front office executive in one of those is wholly on the Y chromosome. But because we have lots of biases, this has been seen as important for a key reason, like, well, a woman needs to succeed because she's got to overcome all these sort of, you know, obstacles created there. So from that standpoint, it's disappointing.
So Andy, I don't think Andy she'll be out of a job for long. I've just floated that she should be our president of baseball ops, but you know,
I don't think that'll ever happen. According to Bob Nightingale, so your mileage may vary on the veracity of this statement. Kim declined the mutual option in her contract for next year, so it was her choice to leave. Now, I'm sure there were other conversations, and to Brian's point, the Marlins have not had a well-functioning front office in a couple of decades at this point. But
ever may be the right term there.
Yeah, I've got to think that she probably has something else lined up, and it would be the shock of all shocks that if it was with the Houston Astros, it's not. There's, I don't know. I'm going to get in trouble. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting your president of baseball operations, period. But I think that's a different conversation for later on sort of what the front office means. Because again, the important conversation with the Astros is, unlike the Marlins, unlike the Yankees, unlike the Dodgers and Braves, all these other teams we mentioned, the Astros, despite having a really lousy Sunday, are still in the ALCS, still have a chance to do something and have a sort of game today. Let's take a moment and look sort of the other side of the bracket, where again, the Braves and Dodgers went out, and I think as we all agreed as we watched the final weekend of the season, we all looked at the Diamondbacks and said, that's a team that's going to win a lot of playoff series. Now, there are some really good things about the Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen's a really good pitcher, and he'll go tonight in game one. Corbin Carroll is an emerging star in this game, and I think just an absolutely fun player, not just a talented player, but he's a delightful player to watch, in my opinion. On the other hand, they got some guy named Geraldo Perdomo to hit a home run in the series as part of 4 home runs. They hit 4 home runs in an inning. Are they any good, or just the Dodgers a spent force?
The Diamondbacks, are they any good?
Yeah.
I think they're very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're very good. Yeah. Sorry, Andy. You kind of cut off for a second. Sorry.
No problem. I think they're very good. The fact that they ran into the annual ineptitude parade that the Dodgers put on in the playoffs has very little to do with them. The Dodgers were going to lose to anybody in that series the way they played. That you don't pitch well, you don't score runs. It's hard to win games. But the Diamondbacks have a big part of that with they pitched well. They hit timely. They played really, really good defense, which those are the things you have to do in the playoffs, not strike out a lot, play good defense, and get good pitching. I think the series that they're about to face with the Phillies is going to be really interesting because the Phillies are going to score a lot of runs, and they didn't have to deal with that against the Dodgers. So I think they're probably realistically a year away from being a legitimate World Series threat, but they just need to win 4 more games and they're a legitimate World Series threat. So I think they're certainly a team on the come, and the very few holes that I can see on their team other than just experience, but you can make up for that with energy and the right things happening at the right time.
Yeah, I think I think to Andy's point, I think I don't think this series against Philly, I think it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be very competitive. I think it's going to be over probably in 5, but that shouldn't take anything away from, I think, the trajectory of the team. I mean, let's not forget though, even though the Astros swept them, the first 2 of those games I think were separated by a run each or something ridiculous like that. Like it was really, really close. They pitch well. They seem to have timely hitting, and even though we're gonna have their left fielder next year, right, Andy?
Because all of a sudden we're going to get a free agent.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a team on the come. Like Andy said, I think they're fun to watch, and I think that you could be looking at the heir apparent in the NL West going forward.
So first of all, I'll note that there's no way the Astros signing a Cuban free agent can go poorly. That's why they got Jeff Bagwell to be the GM.
We are all here for it.
Yeah. The Phillies are a better playoff team because they're able to get more innings from their top 2 starters. At the same time, the Phillies were a 90-win team this season, which is good but not great. And I just kind of feel they're being overrated because, I don't know, people just watch 4 games and assume that that's it. Or journalists really like the Phillies because they like the crowd, and apparently they talk to them a lot in the media, or they just like the Attaboy Harper response, or they just like Garrett Stubbs wearing overalls with a beer carton on his head, which frankly I like too.
Which is weird because Garrett Stubbs never went to A&M.
You can take the boy out of Southern California, and you can take the Southern California out of the boy.
Yeah, apparently you can.
Yeah. Maybe he'll be atoning for that on Yom Kippur next year. We shall see. That being said, the Diamondbacks, they have one good hitter and then a bunch of guys who are okay. So, the real key for the Diamondbacks is they have two good starting pitchers. They could really use Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly beating Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. So tonight we'll find what's the proper way to spell Zach, with a K or with no extra letter, and that'll be important. Let's get back to the Astros here. Andy, thoughts or keys, things you're looking for in today's game?
Runs, like more than zero, would be.
Yeah, I heard you say the plural there. There was an S on the end of that, which I think is I noted.
I would like to see any kind of offensive approach, and this is one of the things I bitch about constantly and that nobody wants to listen to, and I get it because I know nothing. We have too many guys, and I know I'm going to pick on Jose Altuve for a minute. I understand what makes him successful, his ability to hit a pitch anywhere that's thrown near him. But there's got to be a point where you're facing a Nate Eovaldi, and jumping on him early isn't necessarily the goal if you know the weakness of the team you're facing is middle relief. Right. The goal is to have him throw a lot of pitches and still get on base and still score runs. You want to get the Rangers starters out early. You want to get them out much earlier than the seventh inning like they did last night, so you can take advantage of what is a weakness on your opponent's team. So I think you've got to have a strong approach against Eovaldi. We can hit Eovaldi. We have hit Eovaldi. Nasty Nate has every chance to be effective, but I think he's gettable. The other key for me is which Fromber shows up, and we usually know that pretty early. If he's walking guys in the first inning and there's not a double play immediately following it, there's probably going to be trouble. And that usually turns into home run balls when he starts trying to overthrow his fastball. So I think for me, any offense and Fromber are the keys, which I'm really revealing secrets of the inside game here. Pitch well and hit well.
It is a useful thing in baseball. James, your thoughts? What are you looking for today?
Well, I'll kind of extend on Andy's second part there. I want to see a lot of ground balls out of Fromber. I think what was kind of weird is JV had kind of a Fromber Valdez approach last night when he was getting key ground balls and key double plays when he needed them. That I think is going to be the key. And I think it's also going to be, it seems like whenever the hiccup has happened for a couple of our starting pitchers when they've been really inconsistent has been the second and third inning. And I would love to see, because I think JV threw 7 first inning pitches last night, and then he threw like 20 in the second. So I'd like to just see that ground ball working for Fromber, because I agree with Andy. The ultimate goal doesn't have to be scoring a lot of runs on Eovaldi. It has to be getting him out of the game at the 6th inning, and then really getting to see either their leverage relievers again, because the Astros have hit all of those leverage relievers in their careers, or getting to see even some of the lesser ones that they don't necessarily want us to see. I think the goal really is stay tied and then win it in the late innings against the bullpen.
I'll give a slightly different key, but one that's on theme here, which is Dusty should be aggressive thinking about going to the bullpen.
Yes. I mean,
because he got a good start, because he got 6+ innings from Justin Verlander. He didn't need to lean so much on his bullpen, and Hector Neris, even though he got 4 outs, was really efficient in those 4 outs through, I think, 17 pitches. So any sign of wobbliness, Fromber particularly, leading to the 3rd time of the order, I think Dusty ought to be real aggressive. I think we can see Phil Maton in the 5th, and maybe some extra pitches from other guys, maybe Hunter Brown. This is where losing Kendall Graveman hurts, is you'd have one more pitcher you'd have more confidence in. But you've got a number of rested options in the bullpen, and can bullpen your way through the last 4 or 5 innings, including getting an inning each, possibly more than an inning from Abreu and Presley, who were efficient. Abreu was good yesterday, and then Presley didn't pitch. So again, being aggressive with the bullpen is something that I think it's where the Astros have an advantage. And again, I think it's somewhere. Yeah, I'd like to see Dusty being aggressive with that. I should note Dusty has not been aggressive going to his bullpen in the middle innings, and he really hasn't needed to. So that's not a criticism. That's just an observation. It's one of the things I've been looking at this playoffs, is that he was real aggressive in 20 and 21, getting a starter out into his bullpen. He wasn't in 2022. And again, some of that's the talent, and hasn't been, but hasn't needed to be so far. His decision to stick with Verlander yesterday worked out very well. It has a number of times so far. So again, Dusty's made good decisions so far for the most part. Maybe time to press the accelerator on the bullpen today.
Yeah, and I think to follow up on that, because I agree with you, Brian, is also to remember that, remind Dusty that there's a day off tomorrow. So you can really be Johnny Holstaff the minute that Fromber starts to wobble a little bit. And if that wobbling happens at the end of the third inning, then so be it.
Yeah, I think you run into one of the things that makes Dusty a good players manager, hurts him sometimes in the playoffs. He knows that if you're a starting pitcher, it's very important to be qualified for that win. And if Fromber pitches well to get to the fifth inning, he's going to get every opportunity to finish the fifth inning and get that win. And where Dusty tends to err on the side of his starting pitcher is what happens after that point. So I would agree that if you can get him to 5, that's great. But 5, if Fromber's effective, means he hasn't seen anybody 3 times and they haven't seen him 3 times. And you move on with what should be higher quality middle relief pitching than the Rangers can muster.
Yeah, so that would be, I think we have some useful things here. We want to see a better offensive approach today. It's what Andy said. We want to see Fromber getting more ground balls. So James said, and I want to see Dusty being aggressive with the bullpen. That's what I said. These are, we think, 3 keys to this game. So that'll be game 2 today. They'll take off, as James noted, tomorrow. So again, affects the managerial decisions, and then 3 games at the Tractor Supply Company warehouse up in the Metroplex area. So
I just hope Jerry moves the weed eaters.
Exterior shots of the today's exterior shots of good architecture placed in a nice place, because you won't get that the rest of the week. And with that, we say to our listeners in Dallas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, could have built it downtown and had a pretty ballpark, but
hey, a little
this is what you got.
Tip: if you're attending the game, the Applebee's isn't as great as the Chili's, and those are your options in Arlington. Go Astros.
I just hope that Jerry Jones gets the weed eaters out of the way before the Rangers have to play a home game. Go Astros.